Let's see what John Lewin's talking about from day 13. Let's go.
Mr. Lewin, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The floor is yours. Good afternoon, everybody. Over lunch, I had a nightmare that when I was going to come back up here, that Mr. Tacopina was only half done. I'm not sure, but I believe I had a birthday and at least one grandchild during that closing. And I bring that up for a specific reason.
Oh, here we go already.
Do not confuse the length of that argument with the persuasiveness of it. What we kind of have gotten away from.
Here we go already.
So this is the case of People versus Joaquin Mayers. This is not People versus Mr. Efron. It's not People versus John Lewin. It's People versus Joaquin Mayers. And the reason that I point that out is because if you didn't know better and you listened to the closing, you would think that either Relly was on trial, maybe I was on trial, and we're not on trial. And I think it's important when you are listening and really going through these arguments that you understand what this case is about. And for that reason, I'd love to say that I'm going to be very brief up here.
Yeah, we wouldn't believe
and
you.
And the reason I'm not going to be is that, unfortunately, I've got an obligation to make sure that I address the points that defense counsel made. Whether those points are relevant, whether those points are persuasive. I can tell you this, I won't be as long as Mr. Tacopina was, and I'm confident that you will get the case today, this afternoon. But that's where we are.
All right, let's see.
This is Randy's Donuts. This is Randy's Donuts. This is on the corner. You're looking at Randy's. This is in Inglewood, on the corner of basically Manchester and La Cienega. This is the exit from the 405. If you're coming, we're looking northbound.
Shout out to Randy's.
30 years ago, when I was a young deputy DA in Torrance, I used to drive from home, and I would have to take this route on the 405. And every day, I would get off on the 405, and I would tell myself that if God wanted me to get a donut, He would make sure that the light that you can't see right here was red. And as you can see, God wanted me to have a lot of donuts. I ended up most of the time, I stopped. But there came a time where it just wasn't good enough for me to take the chance on the light. So what I would do is, it's a really long straightaway, and you can see when you're getting off the freeway, you can see that light. So what I would do is literally, I would coast my car at 20 or 25 miles an hour, making sure that I hit the red, and then I could go in and I'd get that donut. And I bring this up because passing up that donut was extremely difficult for me. Very, very hard. And most days I wasn't able to do it. And I always thought that that's probably one of the hardest things that I would have to do. And then I became a trial lawyer. And then I started trying cases. And then I started trying serious cases.
What's he talking about?
And I can tell you that what it takes to pass up that donut is nothing compared to what it's like when I have to sit here during a closing argument, and the defense is up, and I have to listen. And I want to get up and I want to scream, I want to yell. I can't do it. I try to do different things, try to focus on something else, try to go to a little happy place. It's really, really hard. It's especially hard.
He said he tries to go to his happy place.
What?
So now he's saying he's a victim. John Lewin is a victim, y'all. Ah, this is tough. We're only three minutes in. Oh God. You're not relatable, John. Please don't take this angle. Good God.
It's really, really hard. It's especially hard when, as in this case, Mr. Tacopina makes an argument. And I want to be clear about something. I'm going to attack the arguments that Mr. Tacopina made. Because that's what lawyers do. That's what's fair. I'm going to attack the arguments that he made. I'm going to attack the case that the defense put on. I'm not going to attack Mr. Tacopina personally. I'm not going to cast aspersions on evidence that he put on. In the end, witnesses, we don't vouch for our witnesses, ladies and gentlemen. What that means is that we put on witnesses, and those witnesses testify to what they're going to testify to. So I'm going to go through, and I'm going to very critically point out what this case is about and what it isn't about. And kind of before I get there, I want to talk a little bit about your role as jurors. So you 16 people, we started in what year? And I know many of you, probably most, maybe all of you, none of you wanted to be here. Okay? And I get it. It's understandable. But you were chosen. It wasn't simply magic that you ended up as jurors. Both sides chose you. And honestly, and one of the few things Mr. Tacopina and I probably agree on is that in our country, it's an incredible honor to be able to be a juror, because in other countries, we don't have jury trials. We don't have any system of justice. But you were selected, and it literally is an honor. But along with that honor comes a duty and a responsibility. And I'm not going to understate it. I'm not going to pretend it's anything other than it's not. I will tell you, Mr. Kozlenik and I, we have done our duty, our responsibility in putting on this case. We have given you a case, or we have proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. It's going to end up going into your hands, and I'm going to explain to you what the evidence demonstrates and what the verdict in the case should be.
He said they proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Are y'all buying that? Let me know in the comments and in the chat. Are y'all buying that they've proven the state, the prosecutors, John Lewin, Mr. Bradley, whose last name I cannot pronounce, have they done their job? Let me know.
Some of you might be saying, wait a minute, I don't understand why we had a trial. Because let's face it, no matter how much the defense wants to talk about how this is all about Relly's credibility, it isn't. It's on video. What's amazing about this case is how little in the end Relly's credibility or anything that matters in the case is really an issue. Now, it certainly could have been an issue. There could have been a defense in this case. There could have been, where the defense put on evidence and they said, hey, listen, Relly, you can't see it, but Relly, when he came, had a weapon. And he said, I'm going to kill you. And the defendant at that point in time pulled a gun to defend himself. And the situation ended and Relly followed. And he threatened again, and he pulled out another gun. And that would have been difficult for us to counter, not because it's true, but because the evidence that you would have been given would have been much more problematic, much more difficult. That's not the defense they chose. The defense they chose, and I'm going to get into this in a little more time and more detail. I want to make sure you all understand it right off the bat. This case comes down to one issue and one issue only. They are saying it's a prop gun. If it's a prop gun, he is absolutely not guilty of the charges. Not because he didn't pull it, not because he didn't fire it, but because under the law, if it's not a real firearm, it's not a violation of Penal Code Section 245, and it's not the personal use of a firearm. Now, here's what's interesting. Now, again, I'm going to explain this in more detail.
Here we go.
Mr. Tacopina got up here and he says, absolutely, hey, listen, he did not have a real gun. It's a prop gun. But it's still self-defense. That's not true. If it is a prop gun, there is no self-defense. And the only way you can get to self-defense in this case is you have to find, one, that it was a real gun, which it clearly was a real gun. There's no question there. It was a real gun. The prop gun is a figment of the defense and the witnesses who testified to it. You have to find that not only is it a real gun and that it was fired, but that the defendant was defending other individuals or himself, and that the force that he used was necessary. And ladies and gentlemen,
if he feared for, it's about imminent danger. And here's the thing. Self-defense has nothing to do with it being a prop gun or a real gun. Because can't you use a baseball bat and it be self-defense? And they're saying, okay, well, if you think it's a real gun, it could be self-defense. I don't get John's point here, but we'll let him cook, I guess.
He wasn't defending anybody else.
Putting
Force
greens in
was
the
not
bathtub
necessary.
like Kamala.
It's a sad situation, and I'm going to confront this head on. It would be easy for you all as jurors to say, wait a minute, I don't get it. This is a guy who's got everything. He has everything. He's successful. He's got a beautiful wife. He's got 2 children who were here. And some of you might be saying, gosh, you know what? Why would he risk that? And
It's a good question.
That's a very good question. It's just not a question that is for you to consider. Because in the end, the issue is not why did he risk it? Why did he do what he did? Because what the evidence shows is that is what he did. This is also not, let me repeat, not about Relly and his civil suit. And let's talk about that for a moment. And let's talk about exactly what we are dealing with here. I want to move forward here. As I'm talking, again, some of you might be saying, hey, listen, Mr. Lewin, we've been listening to this case. Why are you even up here arguing? We get it. If I were in charge of the court system, which I'm not, I would make an adjustment. And what would happen is there would be a scoreboard right on top of between where juror number 4 and juror number 5 is. And I could look up and I could see, oh, okay, we're up 42-0. I can take a knee. I can run a clock out.
What is he talking about?
But I don't have a scoreboard. I have no idea what you 12 jurors are thinking. I have no idea. I have no idea if some of the crazy arguments by the defense, gosh, maybe somebody believes them. One of the most difficult, frustrating things that can happen is, and I try not to do this, but I will see jurors taking notes, writing things down at certain points where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why are they writing that? That doesn't make any sense. Of course, I don't know what you're writing. I have no idea.
All right, if I'm sitting on this jury, this guy sounds like a psychopath. What is happening? I don't know what you're thinking. I have impulse control. I like to buy donuts. Sometimes I'm sitting here and I just can't control myself. I want to give him a chance, man, and be objective, but just listen to this as a regular person. I'm like, bro, what? What are you talking about? You want a scoreboard and you want to know what we're thinking? Can you just do your job, maybe? What a weirdo, man. Dang.
You could be writing down a point.
This is not
You could be writing
relatable.
down- that doesn't make any sense at all.
This is not relatable at all.
But here's what I do know. I've got an obligation to make sure that I address everything that the defense has brought up. Good points, bad points, irrelevant points, nonsensical points. I have to address it all because I don't know where each one of you are at. And the reason is pretty simple. There is no way that I can ask you 12 jurors to do your job if I haven't done mine. So
we're waiting.
That's kind of the background of where we find ourselves.
We're waiting for that to happen.
All right, let's talk for a second about the defense closing argument, and I think it's important. So, what they have done, and listen, I get it. Relly, in a lot of ways, was a very problematic victim. Why is he problematic? Well, one, in a lot of ways, he's not very sympathetic. And I'm not here to get you to like Relly, to get you to say, you know what, Relly deserves $30 million. Because unlike what Mr. Takapia said, you're not here to decide that. You are not here. I'm not Relly's lawyer, and you're not the jury who's going to decide what damages he's going to get. Evidence has showed he has a civil suit. You're aware of that. I'm not telling you anything that's not a part of the evidence. And if that civil suit goes to trial, as you all know, there will be a jury that will decide what, if anything, he gets. That is not you 12.
Not getting anything.
I don't need to shortchange you alternates. Being alternates are really, I'm not going to lie, it's a crummy job. You get to sit through everything, and then you don't get to vote. I think I said this on voir dire. I would have held my hand up and said I cannot be an alternate. I can't do it. I need to be able to vote. So when I say U12, I really mean U16. You never know who is going to end up on our jury. But what is important to keep in mind is that you're not here representing Relly. But you know what I do want to explain? I want to explain for a second what happened with Relly and who he is and what he's been through. And I think it's really important, and this kind of goes to what the defense is in this case. This is a picture that if you look at it, it's very blurry, okay? You can't see what's going on. Why is that? Because what the defense wants to do is they want to zoom up so close on every irrelevant fact that you forget why we're even here. And what's an example of that? I'll tell you right now. Mr. Acapina spent time pointing out the fact that Relly was not honest about buying a property in Miami. Now you need to ask yourselves, what does his property in Miami have to do with what happened on November 6th? Nothing. But he would say, well, but wait a minute. If Relly is not being truthful about that, you don't have to believe about anything. I'm going to get to why that is not what the instructions actually direct you to do. But I want to do something more. I want to do something better. I want to explain to you from the evidence why Relly was up there doing what he did. So let's first talk about the fact that Mr. Acapina spent a lot of time talking about, hey, the defendant, he just sat there, he was dignified, he didn't make any fuss, etc. That's all true. That doesn't mean anything. The defendant is an extremely powerful individual. His wife is even more powerful. Relly found himself in a situation where he was on the wrong side of that power divide. And by the way, it doesn't matter why he got there, but you know why. You heard it. There was a disagreement about ASAP Josh and about what happened to him and what was going to be paid for and what wasn't. And what's important is that Relly and the defendant had a disagreement about it. That's what happened. And because of that disagreement, and because of ego, this is what happened. Now, some of you might be saying to yourself, well, wait a minute. I mean, in the end, what really happened in this case? Okay, it wasn't a prop gun, obviously. The evidence demonstrates, and by the way, we don't have to prove that
there's
Relly
no
got
evidence.
shot.
Come on, John, you were doing
The
good.
reasonable inference from the evidence is that he's got a wound on his hand that he didn't have beforehand. I'm going to address this again, but every time you hear the defense say, where was the witness to testify to that? You need to remember something. They are the ones that are arguing that this was a prop gun. They are the ones that are arguing that Relly didn't actually sustain these injuries from a gunshot. They are the ones arguing that casings would not have been found. You got how many lawyers over there? How many people? There was a point in time during jury selection where they almost had a football huddle. There were like 8 or 9 of them over there. Do you think for one moment, 1 millisecond, that if those individuals had something positive to say to help the defendant, that they would have called those individuals? If, for instance, Relly's injuries could not have been caused by a graze wound, they would have called a witness. So what you're left with is, Relly didn't have that wound when it started. He testified that he felt heat going through his hands instantly. So the idea that, well, it's a minor wound.
This is not good.
But we're
He was doing so good too. He was bringing me back. He was reeling back in, and then he let me go again. Because now you're saying, hey, we're not gonna question Relly, because it's not about questioning Relly. It's about the facts. And they want you to believe this, and we want you to believe this. The problem with that, sir, Mr. Lewin, is that you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that's what happened. And sir, you have not done that. They don't have to prove that it was a prop gun. They don't have to prove that Relly didn't scrape his hands or Relly didn't get shot. They don't have to prove that. You have to prove that it did happen. And guess what? You didn't call any experts. You don't have the video of Relly returning to the scene. You don't have the gun. It's reasonable doubt, my guy. And I thought y'all were supposed to be better than this.
Well, it's a minor wound, and that's true. But we're not here to talk about the consequences. I want to really point out something that's really important. This was 10 p.m. on a busy Saturday night in the middle of Hollywood. And what happened? And you know this. So I'm going to go through this evidence at length. But the short story is that the defendant, because he was angry, because of ego, because of the fact that he is who he is, he decided that he was going to have a confrontation with Relly. That's what happened. We'll go through the video. It's very clear. The defendant goes there with a gun. He's got two guys with him. He grabs Relly. He initiated this incident. And what I don't think is being addressed enough, and Relly talked about it, is that, remember, Relly has no idea, before this is happening, he doesn't think it's this severe of an issue. They've known each other half their lives. They understand they're upset with each other, that's clear. You have to text back and forth. But at that moment, and I'm not talking about when the defendant fires the gun, I'm talking about the parking garage. When the defendant pulls out the gun, Relly's entire future flashes before his eyes. And do you know what that future is? He's done. It's over. What makes it over? Well, he understands that if the defendant is upset with him enough to pull a gun on him, that he's going to ruin him. As he told you, that means no more artists will sign with him. That means record deals will go away. He's done. And he doesn't know this is coming. He doesn't have time to contemplate it. And what's his response? It's shock and it's anger. And it's not really thinking about what is smart. The argument Mr. Tacopina makes is, well, who would go after somebody who's pulled a gun on them? Well, that's not quite a fair argument, because it's not somebody who's pulled a gun on them. It's someone that was a close friend. And Relly told you he really wasn't thinking about the consequences. He was angry. He also told you that, you know what? Rocky had pulled a gun on him and he put it back. So he realized at that point, his life as he knew it is over. By the way, he was right. So we're not here to talk about what damages Relly should get, what damages he shouldn't get. But let's remember something. That man shot him. That man took away the career that he had. I don't know what that's worth. 30 million sounds a bit excessive to me, but I'm not the lawyer in that trial and you're not the jury. So that will be hashed out, that will be debated, and that will be eventually decided upon. But there's no question in that moment, he realized that he was losing something very, very important, very precious. And so what does he do? He follows, and we have the second incident. Now, what started the second incident? We'll never know. We know that Relly is yelling at him. Relly is saying very unkind things. And we know there's no question the defendant is proud. Okay? And I'm going to give you another word because I'm not going to hide from it. He's entitled. All right? Everybody runs around. He is a big, important man, and everybody serves him. This is just a small example, but it's important. The witnesses who came in are dependent upon him financially. They're dependent upon
life
him
flashed
for their
before his
careers.
eyes.
And what happened in the middle of a trial with 12 on the stand? 12's asked a question. Has anyone ever seen or heard a defendant yell out to a witness in front of the jury, "Don't answer that"? That's what happens when you have a lot of power. And no one has ever told you, you know what? You can't do that. So why did the defendant, why did he take out the gun and fire those shots? I don't know. But you don't have to figure that out either. Because in the end, and I covered this in jury selection, I asked each one of you.
They do have to figure that out.
Mr. Kozlemick and I, if we prove to you
That's not
what
true.
happened in this case, beyond a reasonable doubt, and you don't understand why it happened, it still happened. But that's not where the story ends. Because that act, and the first act's important too, when he pulls the gun out,
He's not being
I'll go to the
truthful.
video, but it's very clear that that incident ends because a couple of people walk by. That's very clear. There are witnesses. One of the witnesses I think 12, I believe, even mentioned, yeah, there's people walking by, but that's not what ended it. Well, you can see where they are, and you can see that right after, that's when he puts the gun back. When they get to the second scene, something happens. And one of the things that makes no sense in the defense argument, 0 sense, is that they keep talking about the timing of the shots. Okay? It's not when the first shot was fired, and you're going to see it. You can see, you can't tell what it is, but you can see Rocky make a movement behind his back and pull out a firearm. Pull out, you can't tell what it is, but he's going to pull the item out, and at that point in time, he's going to start advancing to where Relly and Ills are. That is what Relly responds to, is that firearm being pulled out. Yes, he grabs Ills before the first shot is fired because he's trying to avoid getting shot. So again, the timing of which shot it is it 1 second before or after, that's an irrelevancy. It doesn't matter. It's not even the defense theory.
So he's saying he saw the gun and then he started to use Ills as a shield. Is that what y'all saw? Let me know in the comments. That's not what I'm seeing. That's not how I'm seeing it. It does not look like he's trying to protect himself. It looks like he's trying to beat the shit out of somebody. Let me know.
And the other thing that is really, really important, and again,
the video was bad.
Behind it.
It's hard to see, so I don't know.
That man decided that his ego and his vendetta and his anger at Relly was important enough that he was going to risk not only Relly's life or Ill's life, but he was going to fire 2 shots from a 9mm firearm in the middle of Hollywood. Now, I don't have to tell you, because you all know it's common sense. Bullets travel until they hit something. That's what happens. They're fired at very, very high velocity. They're coming out at an incredible speed. And they travel until they hit something. Sometimes what they hit is the ground. And they ricochet. Sometimes what they hit is a car. Sometimes what they hit is the person they're aimed at. And sometimes, some tourist walking down Hollywood Boulevard with her family all of a sudden drops dead because they've been shot in the head by a bullet that somebody selfishly fired to settle a childish dispute.
Dang.
That's what he did. That's the conduct in this case. Woo. It's not about what injury Relly received. It's not about how much money he's going to sue for. Those are not in the jury instructions. You're not going to see a jury instruction on, quote, extortion.
Oh, he's cooking
because that's not
right
what
now.
you're here to decide. That's what happened in this case. That man decided, you know what? I'm angry, and I'm going to show him.
Yo, hey, listen, that's a good point. He's using the fear right now. Say, hey, you guys want to be walking down the street one day because 2 blocks down, 2 guys are having a dispute. One fires a gun in the air and you or somebody you love gets hit. Woo! I know the jury might have felt that one.